Hello,
Hello.
everybody. I hope you're all staying safe, and thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time. What I want to do today is walk through with as many people as possible, sort of where we're at in Congress and what we're up to, and explain some things, some decisions we have to make. I also have a couple of requests that we need from you, information that we need. And I want to refer also to a document that we sent to you, I think it was a week ago, about what Congress is interested in. So that's the purpose of this call. Like you, we're inundated with communications between phone calls and emails and text. It's overwhelming. I know you're going through the same thing. And I'm finding it difficult to sort of get ahead of the curve despite a very organized NCAF staff. So this is an attempt to get us all sort of on the same page and understand sort of where we're at. So let me start first. Again, hoping you're safe. I want to start first with $1 billion with the third supplemental. We were lucky to get in there. A lot of groups did not. Members are telling us that they're absolutely overwhelmed with calls from constituents or organizations or businesses, groups, complaining about lack of money and being out on COVID 3.0, that supplemental, or wanting to get in the fourth supplemental, the one that's in the works that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. So we were lucky to get in there. I feel very good about that. What is becoming a very, very serious problem for us is the slowness in getting the money out. We're getting members continually calling us about status because undoubtedly they've heard from the network. I don't blame OCS on this. This is not anything personal there, but HHS is really starting to hurt us right now in terms of lack of communication. I am current through late Friday. Janelle is out today, so I'm not sure of the status this morning at HHS, but I'm operating on the assumption that the guidance to the state is not out, let alone the money. HHS has given us deadlines. They've promised me deadlines on when the money would be released. And in baseball terms, or those of you that follow baseball, they're batting below the Mendoza line, which means 100, 200. They've not been accurate at all. We were assured that the money would be out in the state's hands, available for drawdown at the absolute latest, April 30th. Well, the problem that we've got is that members now of Congress are now asking, how's the money going? What's it being used for? Tell us about the results. Tell us about the effectiveness. And so that is creating a fairly significant issue that complicates our life going forward, as you hear in a second. So I think that we're about to turn full congressional attention on HHS. Those of you that your relationships with the states or with Congress, let them know. No communication yet, no guidance, let alone any money, number one. And number two, I would think we need to go as high as we can in state government to start complaining to HHS. We got a couple members want to do something, make a couple phone calls to the White House, but we've got to up the pressure on this. And the problem that we're going to have at the states, one is the state administrators for CSBG are fairly well down the pecking order. So you've got to go high in state government. Well, every governor's got a laundry list of what they need out of Washington. That's 25 or 30 items long at least. Every mayor has a laundry list. So getting their attention is going to be difficult. We'll struggle through this together, but I think it's time that we turn up the concerns about where the communications are and where the money is at. I hope by the end of this call, somebody texted me and said, guess what? We just got the guidance and got the breakdown and money's on its way. But as of right now, it's not. And that is becoming a concern. In 3.0, there are a number of issues that we we either didn't address, didn't think of, or discovered later that these are issues that need clarification. So I want you to know there's three that are very active. One is the 200% eligibility, which is for the supplemental, but it's for 20, 21, 22. States have the flexibility to raise that, as you know. The first request I have of the people listening on this call, I need a pretty serious summary quickly from 50 states. So if the state association could take a lead, or somebody else, just one person in the state, don't need 800 emails, but what is the status on the 200% A for the supplemental? Any problems, any pushback from the states? And then second, have you had any discussions about the 200% for 20, 21, and 22? Just need an update because Congress asked for an update this morning. And so we'd like to get that back to them. That's the first issue, 200%. Second issue is that when we changed the formula in 89 and 90, benefiting the small states, we changed it from 0.25% up to 0.5% in 89 and 90. And I put in a provision in there that no state could receive over 140% of its previous allocation. That was a way around, Kennedy and others, big states. And so it worked, and it got everyone on the same page in Congress driving appropriations. So it took 2 years, but we got things worked out for the small states. That provision is still in current law. And that's part of the reason, one of the small reasons, but part of the reason we need a reauthorization. HHS has interpreted that that applies to the supplemental. And so the small states are only going to get 40% of their, 5 million, it's a little less than 5 million, so about 1.8. And the rest of the money would be given after October 1st. Problem with that is, number one, you never leave money laying around. And who knows what the environment, who knows how slow they, for whatever reason, it could be in getting the second tranche out. And second, small states need the dollars as well as big states on this. So our second need that we have addressed is to make sure that small states get all the money. And then the third issue that we've raised is that the eligibility applies to 20, 21, and 22. And then also connected with this supplemental was that how quick and the time frame for when states receive the money to when the money is actually at the local level. So we have a package of those three things that we negotiated hard for 2 weeks after passage of the COVID 3.0 that has those three things in there. It's been agreed to by Republicans and Democrats on authorizing, because authorizing has to sign off on it. They play a major role on appropriation supplemental. Someday I hope I'm in a setting that I can give you all the ins and outs on this. And then the appropriations, Labor H is fully aware and supportive of that package. So we now turn our attention to the fourth supplemental, which is probably 3 weeks away, maybe 4. And keep in mind that on the third supplemental, one that we got our $1 billion, I've talked about this before, but the universe of members that were involved was probably at any one time no more than 35 or 40. And it wasn't as if we had 435 members enlisted. Think of a chessboard. There are pieces we had to move strategically, but we were able to do that. So on the fourth supplemental, again, it is pieces that we have to move, but it's not 435 members. But it gets complicated. We have our package that we want included in there, and we know that legislating, whether it's on supplemental or appropriations, anything else, is going to get more difficult. It's not going to get easier going on. The bipartisanship we saw on 3.0, on 3.5, and on 1 and 2 on these supplementals was widespread. There's only one or two outliers that really created a few problems. But that bipartisanship has ended. You've got Mitch McConnell saying, let's wait, let's see what we've done. I'm not necessarily interested in money to states or localities. That's what McConnell is saying. Other Republicans have stressed that as well. And at the same time, you've got everybody pushing Congress to be included in this next package. So we've got our legislative fix, but also there is fairly significant interest about another additional pot of money for CSBG. And I've got mixed views. The NCAF board talks every week, and they sort of earn their pay, and we go through the pros and cons. I'm able to give them more time and break down issues, the pros and cons. Well, we've got members that want to add more money on the community services block grant. And the figure that's being talked about is 250 to 500 million. Our comfort level, just to let you know, is around 250 million. There are some saying, well, you're going to have to go 500 because we'll have to compromise at 250. Some of the members that were so active on CSBG on the 3.0 supplemental, the $1 billion, they've got other priorities. And so and we know that, we respect that. And so we've got to thread the needle on this. We've got to be careful. But members that are important are asking what's going on with the money. So the fact the money that they've appropriated. So the fact that it's not out there is hurting us deeply on engaging in these negotiations. So we've got to turn up the heat, get that money released to be able to go back to these members and say, here's what's going on. This is what they're using it for, and this is the needs in the community that aren't going to be able to be met by this this tranche of money. So we're getting asked that a lot, and it's again the process has slowed a little bit. I now think it's the end of May rather than next week or the week after. But this fourth supplemental, regardless of what we're doing on CSBG, and that is, just to reemphasize, that is really a delicate balance. You don't want to alienate key appropriators. You don't want to look too greedy. You want to be able to justify it. We also view the supplemental as critical long-term in terms of building the funding base, the expectations for what CSBG needs that will help us on regular appropriations, which also helps us on reauthorization when we change the formula to lift those small states to 0.75%. We have a trigger in there at 850. This is a backdoor way to get to that trigger. But this supplemental will have LIHEAP in there. We'll have a water assistance component. I'm unsure of the price tag. I've heard as high as $4 billion, and I've heard figures much less than that. They're looking. Appears to be movement to raise the administrative cap on LIHEAP. CAPTOR wants a weatherization component. There's also, McConnell has talked about infrastructure, which also enlists weatherization in there on that. We're looking at raising the limit on the amount that can be transferred to LIHEAP to weatherization. We got a lot going on that fourth supplemental. So we need your input into number one, update on the 200%. Two, we're going to need your help on communicating to Congress about money. Where's it at? Three is the states to go as high up as they can in state government to start raising their voices either to Congress or to HHS or to the White House about the community services block grant money. And then fourth, there's also a need, and that is we sent you a form about a week ago of what your members of Congress want to hear about your activities on COVID-19. I'm doing a lot of Zoom sessions. NCAP's doing a lot of Zoom sessions with members of Congress, and they want to communicate. It is unbelievable. There's only so many town halls or Chamber of Commerce or how many community sessions you can do speaking only about the pandemic and the health consequences. Members are looking for different venues to connect in their community. So I've not found a member yet that doesn't want to participate with us and with you on communication. So that document that we sent you a week ago about how to respond to Congress is important. They want to know. They want to know good stories. They want to know press that's out there. They want to know what additional things they need to do to help you out. That's important. And finally, what I wanted to also bring up is the importance of the fourth supplemental. We're looking at it's going to have a lot of relief for, I think in the end, state and local governments. There's a dividing line between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans really don't want to bail out state or local pension funds, so it's a big, big issue. And there's a few other concerns in there as well. So politically, it's going to be very, very difficult. I think the lines of opposition will be Democrats in Congress versus Republicans, particularly in the Senate. But I think that in the end, the Trump administration will probably, and Mnuchin and maybe even Larry Kudlow, will be aligned with House Democrats. So I'm expecting another package eventually will make it through. And that for our story, that's important. And there's a good chance it'll be over $1 trillion. There's a good chance that things that we want to succeed on will be included in that. But the reason this fourth supplemental is going to be important is that is the pathway, the gateway to FY 2021 appropriations. Last week, I was lucky enough to do a Zoom session with Rosa DeLauro, who chairs House Labor H, and we did one, I think it was the same day, with Tom Cole, ranking Republican on education, Labor HHS approps, Oklahoma. I think we did it that afternoon. I think they were both in the same day. And both want to use the fourth supplemental to basically take care of NIH, Center for Disease Control, community health centers, use that to really plus up those programs. And the importance of that is it frees up money that they need to spend on other programs on Labor H appropriations. The allocation, if everything stopped and Congress had to operate on the 2-year budget agreement, the allocation coming to Labor HHS appropriations right now under the current agreement, money is tight. And we know in this environment, there's going to be some, deservedly so, higher priorities for funding. And basically, the health response would be number 1, 2, and 3 on any list. So if they can move that supplemental, pay for all the health initiatives and the health funding that they need, and that frees up money for Labor H, and it frees up money for Head Start, and it frees up money for LIHEAP potentially, but it also frees up money on the Community Services Block Grant. So the fate of this fourth supplemental is going to be important. So watch for developments in May. I think it will be toward the end of May on supplemental. That should go first. Second, if that passes and they work that out, then I think you'll see a rush for the 12 appropriation subcommittees on the House side to get their work done fairly quickly. And House has always intended to get money, their money bills done by the 4th of July, by the end of June. And I think they're still going to hold true to that. What we don't know is how they're physically going to move these bills. The House is out this week. The Senate is in. And there's a lot of disagreement in the Senate about the wisdom of being in or not. DC is expected to remain closed through May. possibly stretching beyond that. There's some rumors that the city might not open up until July. Virginia, I live in Virginia, we're in a lockdown until June 10th. So physically how they move this and how they do Zoom sessions and virtual markups remains to be seen. It's sort of a clunky, that's not a very professional term, but sort of an awkward process right now. But they're learning. But they are going to attempt to move appropriations. And there is interest in increasing CSPG on the regular appropriation side. And so the next question I need to ask the network is this. If you got an additional, let's say $250 million on the supplemental, first question is, do you need it? You don't have the billion yet, but let's assume you did. A, do you need it? Can we justify it? And second, do you think your member of Congress, I'm not talking Cole or DeLauro, but do you think your member of Congress would be willing to actively support such an effort? We've been asked to generate congressional interest in increasing CSPG, both in the supplemental and FY 2021 appropriations, and we've got to reply to that. So I need a feedback from the network where you think your member's at, if you had any contact with that member, because I've got to build virtually a coalition that's slightly different than the one that we put together for 3.0, because some of those members, as I said earlier, have other priorities, understandably so. And they might not necessarily want to be or have time to be in the lead. So we've got to put together an entire coalition virtually, and it's got to be successful. We try not to lose some issues. So that's going to be important. Finally, I want to take a couple of questions, but I want to ask this. What else should we be thinking about to help you? We get questions in NCAF, Tara and Emily and Francis. We get questions on WIC and other programs. We don't ignore them, but keep in mind that every congressional office is inundated with constituent services. Rosa DeLauro said on this Zoom session, calls to her office are up 5,000%. I mentioned that to Tom Cole and James Comer last week, and they didn't think it's 5,000, but it's triple and quadruple what it normally is. All constituents either complaining about 3.0, wanting to be in 4.0, or something else going on in the community. So we're having difficulty in answering some of your questions on programs that I'm normally not involved with, but it doesn't mean that we're not trying. And so keep sending us those. But if there's things that we should be thinking about on particularly the universe that we operate in that would make you more effective or be helpful to you, we need to know. You know, people have asked about the water assistance program, for instance. A couple of questions have come in. We've engaged in conversations. At one point, and particularly on House and Senate side, but appropriations and authorizing on the Appropriations House, authorizing on Senate. And I should correct my statement, authorizing on the House side to Energy and Commerce. One point we tried to run it through the CSBG grantees, not to be part of CSBG, but you run it through our network, because I was concerned about Michigan. They don't run LIHEAP, and a couple other states, but Michigan came to mind. Now they're looking at the LIHEAP network. I think I've talked about this in the past. There was an effort to combine LIHEAP and energy water assistance in the same program. That's a recipe for disaster. So we're engaged in those, but is there things that we should look at in terms of usages of CSBG to beef that up or tweak it a little bit? We've got some flexibility on there. If there's people have asked about rental assistance, And if you're not able to use CSBG currently, let me know, because some caps are. So I need to know more information on that. And again, there is going to be more additional LIHEAP money. So what we need from you is we need to know how you're doing. If you're running into any problems on needs assessment, if you're running at the state, a few states were, looks like we believe those concerns have receded. Is there any opposition? You run into any barriers on the 200% on the supplemental? Where are discussions going on 200% for FY20 or 21 or 22, which is allowable under COVID-3? We want to make it mandatory under COVID-19 4.0. So we need information from you. That would be very helpful to us. And the reason we need information is we want to be fully armed on how we can help you, what we can do to sort of further your effectiveness and support what you're doing out there in community. So I'm going to go through quickly because I promised everybody 30 minutes. Indiana's going forward on 200%. Indiana, well, we know Indiana's on the phone. What is the administration for the current 3.0 CSBG? There is no percentage in there. It's each state. When should we plan to hear something regarding the new CARES Act? My screen's jumping around. CARES Act immediate funding. Man, somebody's asking about, again, the $1 billion. I'm on HHS every day, and we're going fairly high up, but I'm also talking to a lot of members every day. And now, regardless of why they're calling me, I'm asking them to make calls to as high up as possible. Some call AZAR. There's also a couple of people at the assistant secretary level that were kind of, you mean another 250 million on top of the billion? Mary Patoka asked, yes, that's what they're talking about, 250 to 500. And again, we have to thread the needle on that. If I feel it is jeopardizing a very solid appropriations coalition that's there year in and year out on CSBG, we'll pull back. But right now it's alive and well, and our next call is, I think, tomorrow morning with Congress on that. Yes, we need it. Somebody asked if they have Gohmert as their Louis Gohmert, if they can be excused. Yes. Internet assistance, that's allowable. Eligibility on that. Eligibility date for the $1 billion in California, they set up contracts to begin July 1st. OC has to go backwards to the appropriations date. Curtis, I appreciate that. That's come up before. We've raised that. I'm going to go back and give you a better answer. I'm gonna, because a couple other states have raised that about when the when the effective date is of this $1 billion. Is it signing? Is it when the state receives it? Is it local? And obviously it has a lot to do with obligations that you're making now. LIHEAP for small business, I don't know. And Oklahoma, you're frustrated about money. Again, we brought that up with Cole, and I'm going to be following up on that. And somebody's asking about 4.0 can allow agencies to build capacity in the infrastructure building. Don't know, absolutely don't know. Where that is a little bit down the line from here on. First, we've got to settle on what we're going after. Ohio's 200%. Missouri is waffling. LIHEAP, somebody asked about LIHEAP and 3.0. Yes, 900 million. No, the money's not out. I don't think Oregon has a problem with 200%. And Wyden and Merkley are fine. Merkley calls me every couple of weeks to check in. Florida's doing it 200%. And that's all the questions I've got. So questions that we need to know, concerns we need to know, get them to us. I want to keep you posted on what we're doing. I want you to understand our strategy and what we're trying to accomplish. And the more you help us answer questions, the better off we're going to be, particularly key members when they ask about what's going on with the money that's out there and what unique needs are you doing, and what gaps, what holes in the community did you use that money for? And we've got good stories on that. A couple final questions. Montana's going to do the 200%. Thank you, Montana. I got 2 questions asking for the name of my woodpecker friend who was here earlier. Then he's left. He probably went to lunch. And we decided to name him Cappy. So Cappy, my woodpecker, and he's got a lot of cousins. So someday I'll take pictures of all his cousins that pop in every once in a while. Georgia's doing 200%. Arizona 200%, perfect. Massachusetts doing 200%. So that's sort of where we're at. Watch just from a distance the 4th supplemental. We'll keep you posted on what we're doing on it once you understand our strategy. The NCAF board is deeply engaged, perhaps more than they ever signed up for. So we're weighing everything out. But our long-term goal is to get as much resources and recognition and responsibilities to the network, but to do it in a way that is sustainable long-term for our congressional base. Okay, so that's it. 2:32. My goal was 2:30, and I think I accomplished that. If I didn't get to your question, Illinois, thank you. Skylar, Illinois, thank you. Virginia, thank you. Texas, thank you. You're doing your work, and we're all in this together, and we'll all get through it together. Thanks a lot. Have a good